Good evening, everyone. My name is Dania Suleman, a lawyer in Montreal and a second-generation East African immigrant. My talk today will focus on Afrocentrism, and I think it ties well with Nana's presentation as well. So during my bachelor's, I became involved with a Montreal-based African association that aimed to create a deeper knowledge of the struggles for freedom happening in the continent. Part of our work was also revisiting ancient histories in an effort to understand our legacy and heritage, to feel a sense of belonging. Many Africans from the diaspora, whether from the perspective of a second generation of immigrants or further down the line, revisit ancient African empires and civilization to pinpoint the times in history we had importance, namely that of the pharaonic empire. And for this talk, I'll be focusing my attention on this example. So we see depictions of this empire in much of the Black American culture, for instance, Michael Jackson's Remember the Time or the movie Welcome to America. In both instances, glorified and rich Africa is represented under pharaonic symbolism. Part of the efforts to create proximity with these empires, even just on a symbolic level, is to focus attention on Africa's contributions to world civilization and history, to feel a sense of value that we too had our time of glory on earth, that our histories are not only tribal, village-focused, or inhabitants of large safaris, that we not only had oral transmission of knowledge, but we had written ones too. These intentions of rehashing our different legacies are quite noble and even necessary. There's an urgent need to reclaim a sense of worthiness in the face of brutal colonization and slavery over the past centuries. Also, on a side note, another positive effect is that it also challenges Hollywood's whitewashing of the pharaonic empire, to name that one specifically. Every actress casted for Cleopatra was Caucasian with a bit too much bronzer, so at least on that level, reclaiming our heritage is an important endeavor. Yet my difficulty with linking the pharaonic empire as the climax of African civilization, which therefore should be greeted as an example of success and worth in our individual and collective lives, lies on two levels. First, I believe it creates a very linear narrative of what was going on in Africa at that time. The truth is the pharaonic empire was a Nubian reality, and it had direct impacts in Egypt, Sudan, parts of Eritrea, and Ethiopia. And so focusing on one empire as an African reality versus everything else that was equally happening creates a very singular narrative of a vast period of time, which in this case spans on over 3,000 years for the pharaonic empire. So this tunnel vision amidst so many rich and diverse realities of what was happening on the continent during this same time period. This limited knowledge of a period of time and not seeking to learn more still feels like it stems from the idea of Africa the country rather than Africa the continent with its many civilizations and ways of living. We tend to associate a regional phenomenon or reality to a continental one, and I don't see that happening anywhere else but in Africa. This still feels like we have a colonial mindset of envisioning Africa as a whole rather than as a diverse, intricate, and layered continent. On a second note, most Afrocentrists, myself included, believe in post-colonialism as a way of thought and movement. We recognize the deep effects modern colonization has left and is still felt in present-day African countries. That being said, naming empires that have records of violence, slavery, and patriarchy feels off-putting and contradictory at times. Using examples of power to feel a sense of value, knowing Europe's modern, assertive, and colonial powers themselves is what led to present-day disarray in African countries seems out of line with post-colonialism and even Afrocentrism. Current central powers, whether the World Bank or IMF, still dictates to this day the social and economical programs in Africa. Post-colonialism seeks first and foremost emancipation from these coercive centers of power to have true sovereignty over our lands and policies. Efforts are being made to break free both mentally and nationally from the lingering effects of colonization. Yet naming civilizations that do have a record of colonization feels out of balance with our will to break free from the modern day colonization and to no longer be impressed by it. We should cherish our histories, whether they were glorious or modest, and still be able to recognize the full dynamics of power that were at play and not live in a romanticized vision of our histories. I want to know that I can feel proud of my heritage, whether my great-grandmothers or great-grandfathers were peasants or judges or kings. That my value does not have to be linked to to examples of power and domination. The need to use examples of power and empires to create worthiness still feels classist to a certain extent and very Eurocentric. That royalty still has to be some kind of goal for us to feel that we have a place in this world. Referring to one another as kings and queens has never been more present than today, and though I like it, because basically being a queen has never been this decentralized, basically everyone is, and Queen Bee is the supreme queen, just letting you guys know. I still believe that greatness shouldn't be synonymous with power and domination. And we have every right and entitlement to feel great about our histories and people, even if there's no record of world civilization from whatever region we come from in Africa. Lastly, I believe in knowledge as a means of self-discovery of our plural identities, and even more so of deeper knowledge of our continent's multiple regional, national, collective, individual, ancient and present narratives to understand how vast and rich our many cultures really are. And with this self-discovery, the discovery of each other and all our layered facets, and no longer this Africa, the continent, with like name-dropping 3 civilizations, this is what will give us a true sense of belonging in this generation of Africans around the world. Thank you very much.